Ever find yourself staring at the gas pump like, seriously, how do they even come up with this price?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things you don't think about too much until you're right there.
Right. It's a universal experience. And, well, today we're tackling that very mystery, specifically diving into the world of gasoline pricing in Africa.
This should be interesting.
We've got a stack of reports and analysis here
Yeah.
on South Africa,
Okay.
Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
Cameroon, and Ghana. We're going to unpack those similarities, the differences,
Yeah.
and honestly, the surprising mechanisms these countries use to, keep their citizens fueled up.
I'm excited to dig into this.
Did you know that some countries tie those gasoline prices directly to global benchmarks,
Okay.
while others prioritize stability,
Wow.
even if it means hefty subsidies?
Interesting.
So get ready for some serious aha moments, because we are about to unravel this intricate world of gasoline pricing,
Yeah, let's do it.
one country at a time.
What I find fascinating is how each nation balances those global market forces with their own unique set of government policies,
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
objectives. It's a lot to juggle.
Exactly. It's way more complex than just like supply and demand, right?
Absolutely.
Like back in Econ 101.
Right, like that's just the tip of the iceberg. Take the import parity model, for instance.
Okay.
A lot of countries, including the ones we're looking at today, use this as a starting point.
Okay.
Basically, they figure out how much it would cost to import gasoline,
Right.
and then they factor in their own local expenses.
Okay, that makes sense at first glance.
It seems simple enough, right?
But I have a feeling it gets way more complicated.
Oh, you know what it does?
Yeah.
You start digging into the details and things get interesting.
Okay, yeah.
Let's jump into South Africa.
Okay.
They've got this thing called the Basic Fuels Price,
Okay.
or BFP.
BFP.
And it's surprisingly transparent. They actually publish the entire formula
Wow.
used to calculate it,
Really?
laying out every single component,
Wow.
from the cost of the gasoline itself to shipping, insurance, everything.
Talk about open book policy, huh?
That's right. Total transparency.
Interesting. But here's where I'm curious.
Okay.
Their formula uses a blend of spot prices
Yeah?
from two very different places,
Yeah.
the Mediterranean and Singapore.
Yeah.
Why those two specifically?
That's actually a clever strategy to create a balanced benchmark.
Oh.
You see, by incorporating those two very geographically diverse markets, South Africa ensures its own refineries have to stay competitive.
Interesting. Okay.
Globally, they can't get complacent. If their production costs are too high, that BFP is going to expose them.
So it's like a built-in incentive
Exactly.
for efficiency.
Keep them honest.
But I imagine even with that transparent system, rising prices, those still sting.
Oh, absolutely.
For the average person just trying to fill up their tank.
Of course, yeah.
Especially when you consider that taxes can make up a significant chunk
Right.
of what South Africans pay at the pump.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that affects people everywhere.
It's like deja vu for us here.
Exactly. Very relatable. And it brings up an important point. Governments, they often leverage gasoline taxes and levies to fund various programs, initiatives, While this can be beneficial for society as a whole,
Sure.
it also means that the price at the pump isn't always a direct reflection of the actual cost of that fuel.
It's like a hidden layer
Yeah.
of complexity in the whole equation.
You could say that.
Speaking of government influence, though, let's shift gears over to Egypt.
Okay, yeah.
They've implemented what they call the, get this, automatic fuel pricing indexation mechanism.
It's a mouthful, right?
It is.
But it has a very specific purpose to smooth out those drastic price swings
Okay.
that we often see with global oil.
Gotcha. So a bit of a buffer
Exactly.
to protect consumers
Yes.
from those sudden price shocks.
Like a shock absorber for the market.
Uh-huh.
Every quarter, the Fuel Automatic Pricing Committee,
Okay.
or FAPC,
Oh, there we go. An acronym.
right,
Yeah.
evaluates global oil prices and adjusts their domestic prices accordingly.
Gotcha.
They have a 10% cap on any price change, up or down, to prevent those huge fluctuations.
Okay, so it's like a controlled approach.
Exactly. Stability is the name of the game.
Okay. That sounds reasonable enough. But I can't help but wonder, sticking to this mechanism so rigidly
Yeah.
might create some unintended consequences,
It's a good question.
especially when you consider, again, the volatility
Right.
of global oil prices.
That's a really insightful observation, and it actually leads us to a fascinating wrinkle in Egypt's approach.
Okay.
Despite having this system designed to closely mirror global oil prices,
Right.
Egypt has been selling gasoline at a significant discount.
Wait, so they're intentionally selling it for less?
They are.
Then it actually costs them.
It's a strategy with both pros and cons, you know.
What's the logic behind that? It doesn't seem sustainable.
You've hit on a crucial point. While offering discounted fuel provides immediate relief to consumers, particularly those struggling financially, it also places a significant strain on government resources.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And if that price difference becomes too large, it can incentivize fuel smuggling and black markets, which can destabilize the entire energy sector.
It's fascinating how even a well-intentioned policy can have such, multifaceted implications.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
Try to protect citizens from economic hardship, but also ensuring that long-term stability of the energy market.
It really is. Speaking of navigating complex realities,
Right.
let's shift gears again. Head over to Cameroon, where the government plays a very hands-on role
Okay.
in keeping fuel prices stable.
Interesting.
They use this, what is it, the Hydrocarbons Prices Stabilization Fund?
The CSPH.
CSPH,
Yeah.
which uses government subsidies to shield consumers
Interesting.
from those drastic price hikes.
Okay.
So we were talking about earlier.
Right. So kind of like a safety net.
They set a fixed rate, and if those global prices surge above that, the CSPH steps in and covers the difference.
Interesting. So it's like a buffer for the consumer.
It is like a safety net
Yeah.
for those sudden price spikes. But I bet there's a trade-off
You think?
somewhere.
There usually is.
Right.
While this system shields consumers from those sudden price increases, it doesn't necessarily work the other way around.
Oh, really?
When global oil prices fall, the government doesn't always pass those savings on to the consumer.
So it's a bit of a heads they win, tails you lose situation.
You could say that.
For the consumer, at least.
Right.
That seems a little, unbalanced.
It highlights the complexities involved in managing those fuel subsidies.
Right.
You see, governments often face pressure to maintain that price stability, even if it means absorbing some of the costs
Right.
when global prices fall.
Okay.
And this can have significant implications for government budgets, potentially limiting investments in other areas.
It's a tough balancing act.
It really is.
Protect consumers from price volatility, but then on the other hand, those subsidies come at a cost.
Exactly. And it underscores the fact that fuel pricing is rarely just about the cost of the fuel itself. It's intricately linked to a country's broader economic and political landscape.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, let's take a quick detour to Ghana.
Okay.
They also rely on an import parity-based system,
Okay.
but they've added a few unique twists
Oh.
to their pricing structure.
Interesting. Yeah, Ghana's system, it has a few, interesting quirks.
Right?
In addition to the usual import costs, they've got their own set of levies and margins built in
Okay.
to that final price.
Right.
One that stands out is the Tema Oil Refinery Debt Recovery Levy.
The what?
Tema Oil Refinery Debt Recovery Levy.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly,
Yeah.
consumers are essentially helping to foot the bill
They are.
for a state-owned refinery's debt.
It's a pretty direct way to address the issue.
That's a pretty direct approach, huh?
It is.
Yeah.
And it highlights a broader challenge
Yeah.
faced by many countries,
Right.
particularly in the developing world,
Okay.
managing the financial health of these state-owned enterprises.
Right.
Especially in sectors like energy, it can be incredibly complex.
Yeah. It really drives home the point that fuel pricing, it's not just about economics, right?
Right.
It's deeply intertwined with a country's political and historical context.
It's all connected. Now, another interesting aspect of Ghana's approach is the inclusion of a cross-subsidy levy.
Cross-subsidy levy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, this mechanism aims to, alleviate the price burden on more vulnerable communities by utilizing revenue generated from other areas of the fuel market.
So it's a way to redistribute some of the costs.
Exactly.
Create a bit more, social equity.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a concept that many countries grapple with.
Yeah.
How to balance the, cold, hard realities of market forces
Right.
with the social responsibility to ensure affordable access to essential goods, like fuel.
It's a tightrope walk for sure.
It is.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From South Africa's transparency
Right.
to Egypt's balancing act, those price caps and discounts, Cameroon's government stabilized prices,
Right.
and Ghana's unique levy system.
Yeah, it's quite a mix.
It is. It is. As we kind of step back and compare these four approaches, what stands out to you?
I think it's that constant tension.
Yeah.
We've been, circling around. The struggle between allowing those market forces to dictate prices,
Right.
and implementing government intervention to achieve specific goals,
Okay.
whether they're social or economic. Each country is trying to strike that delicate balance.
Right.
But there's no one-size-fits-all
And
solutions.
it's fascinating to see how these different priorities play out in practice.
It is.
Take Cameroon, for example.
Okay.
We talked earlier about how their system doesn't always pass on the savings
Right.
to consumers when global oil prices fall.
Right. The heads they win, tails you lose aspect.
Exactly.
And if you look at a chart comparing Cameroon's gasoline prices with Brent crude prices,
Okay.
which is a common global benchmark,
Right.
you'll see a clear upward trend in their prices, even when global oil costs have been declining.
So their domestic prices seem to be disconnected
Yeah, to a certain
from
extent.
the global market.
It really underscores how government policies, even those enacted with the best of intentions, can have these unintended consequences.
Right.
In Cameroon's case, by shielding consumers from price increases,
Right.
the government might be inadvertently incentivizing higher prices in the long run.
It's a bit of a catch-22.
It is. It is.
It makes you wonder about the long-term sustainability.
It's a valid concern, and it highlights the need for ongoing analysis and potential adjustments to these systems over time.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about these different pricing mechanisms, government interventions, even these unintended consequences. But is there a way to visualize how closely each country's gasoline prices track with global oil prices?
There is. We can use a tool called a correlation heat map.
Heat map, okay.
Yeah. And without getting bogged down in all the technical details,
Yeah.
it essentially reveals the strength of the relationship
Okay.
between two sets of data.
Yeah.
In our case, we want to see how closely the movement of gasoline prices in each country aligns with, the fluctuations of global oil prices.
So if a country's gasoline prices mirror those ups and downs of global oil prices pretty closely,
Yeah,
we'd see a strong correlation.
exactly. A strong positive correlation indicates that as global oil prices rise, that country's gasoline prices tend to follow suit, and vice versa.
Gotcha. Okay, so what does this heat map tell us about our four countries?
It paints a rather interesting picture. As expected, South Africa, Egypt, and Ghana, they all show a positive correlation with global oil prices,
Okay.
though to varying degrees, obviously.
Right.
This suggests that their domestic gasoline prices are, to some extent at least, influenced by those global benchmarks.
Okay.
But then we have Cameroon.
Ah, our outlier.
Yes.
What's the story?
Well, Cameroon actually shows a negative correlation,
Oh, wow. Okay.
meaning that even when global oil prices are trending downwards, their gasoline prices have been, rather counterintuitively, moving in the opposite direction.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is.
It really drives home the point that those government policies can have a powerful impact,
Oh, absolutely.
sometimes even overriding the influence of the global market.
Precisely. And just to illustrate these differences even more clearly,
Yeah.
imagine a graph comparing those retail gasoline prices across all four countries.
Okay. Yeah.
You would see Egypt consistently at the lowest price point,
Okay.
while Cameroon has recently taken the lead with the highest, even surpassing South Africa and Ghana.
It really challenges that common assumption that if the price of oil drops globally, we should all see those immediate savings at the pump.
It's tempting to think that way.
Right. It feels very direct.
But the reality is far more nuanced.
It seems like it.
You see, those prices we see at the pump, they're the culmination of this complex interplay of factors.
Right.
Government regulations, taxes, subsidies, refining capacity, distribution costs, even seemingly unrelated things like currency exchange rates. It's a lot to untangle.
It seems like the more we uncover about, gasoline pricing, the more we realize just how many moving parts there are.
It's a complex system for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, is there a country out there that's cracked the code?
The holy grail of gas pricing.
Right. A country with a system that manages to keep prices affordable
Right.
for consumers, but also accurately reflects the true cost of fuel.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Feels like it.
And unfortunately, there's no simple answer.
Right.
Each country operates within its own unique set of economic realities, political pressures,
Sure.
social priorities.
Of course, yeah.
What might be considered a resounding success in one context
Right.
could easily lead to unintended consequences in another.
It's like searching for a mythical creature.
Right.
That perfect system always just out of reach.
Exactly.
But I guess that's what makes these deep dives so captivating.
Yeah, I agree.
There's always something more to uncover.
Absolutely.
Always another layer to peel back.
And that brings us to a final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Okay.
When it comes to gasoline prices, especially within the context of developing economies,
Right.
where do we draw the line
Yeah.
between maintaining stable prices
Okay.
and reflecting the true cost of that fuel?
It's a real dilemma. On the one hand, you don't want to shield people
Right.
from those economic realities of the global market. But on the other, letting those prices skyrocket
Yeah.
can be devastating for individuals, for businesses.
Absolutely. Entire economy.
For sure.
It highlights the fact that fuel pricing, it's about so much more than just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It intersects with issues of economic development,
Yeah.
social equity, even political stability.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most straightforward questions, like how much is a gallon of gas,
Yeah.
can lead to the most complex and fascinating answers.
Couldn't agree more. So next time you find yourself at the pump,
Yeah.
feeling that familiar pang of maybe frustration as those numbers climb higher, just remember, it's not just about the oil itself.
Right.
It's a dynamic system.
Yeah.
Constantly in flux, shaped by everything from government policies to global events to consumer behavior and technological advancement.
The whole world, yeah.
And the more we understand these complexities, the better equipped we'll be to navigate those inevitable changes in the road ahead.
I like that. Perfectly put. It's been a truly insightful journey through the intricate world of gasoline pricing in Africa. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those big picture questions. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating forces that drive the prices at